She's here. Henrik Weiss stopped swirling his glass of whiskey. Camille? Timo confirmed it with just a look. The music kept playing softly. Glasses clinked around them. But for Henrik, the entire ballroom vanished. How dare she show up? Smiling, as if she hadn't disappeared from their wedding 1 year ago. Henrik Weiss, heir to a traditional family of mechanical engineers in Neuchâtel, adjusted his silk tie with a swift motion, a futile attempt to mask the cynicism eating at him. Attending his friend Elias's wedding on the eve of his own divorce felt like emotional suicide, and giving an upbeat speech on top of that, the bitter cherry on a very messy cake. He could survive it. He just needed another whiskey and maybe a pair of sunglasses. "You look pale, Henrik," said Timo Roth, the ever-composed former ski champion, with a trace of concern. "Never better," Henrik replied with a dry laugh. There was no need to pretend. He ran one of the most respected machinery companies in Switzerland. His brother Alaric was running for parliament. His finances were solid. And he was sleeping with a discreet, attractive woman who lived 2 doors down. Total convenience. Timo tilted his head, both amused and skeptical. Sure, especially tonight. The sarcasm was unmistakable. Timo could see right through him. Henrik hadn't moved on from Camille. "I'm not in my 20s anymore, Timo. Perfect bodies and sharp tongues don't impress me like they used to." Timo's gaze sharpened. "Henrik, I've got the speech in my pocket," he interrupted, forcing confidence. "Camille is sitting behind you." The words hit like ice. Henrik felt the blood drain from his face. "Camille? My soon-to-be ex-wife." "Bingo," Timo said flatly. Henrik's heart pounded. He was ready to sign the divorce papers the next day. But seeing her in the same room, surrounded by familiar faces, was a blow he hadn't prepared for. Camille never showed up at parties. She was all about work. So why was she here? That night was turning into something far more dangerous than he was willing to admit. He took a breath and slowly turned around. Her dark eyes locked onto his with precision. Everyone noticed. They waited for a dramatic explosion. But his expression stayed calm, almost indifferent, as if to say, "I'm more than what you remember." He returned to the bar beside Timo, grabbed another drink, and stepped aside in silence. Camille had given him more than words over the past year. She had given him space, understanding, even hope. But tonight, he wouldn't let that consume him. Not tonight. Camille Bissett felt the chill of judgment ripple through the room. When Henrik brushed her off like a forgotten trophy on a shelf, her throat tightened. That dry joke of his gave him away. He still wanted her. Desperately. Camille took a deep breath. She was a surgeon, a woman driven by purpose. Going to Albania for a medical mission was an escape. It was a chance to reconnect with who she was. Her father, Professor Emil Bissett, had strongly disapproved. But she went anyway. That night. She moved among respected faces, avoiding a few that still sparked resentment. Henrik was impossible to ignore, composed, magnetic, disarmingly charming. She looked away from his broad shoulders and reminded herself, this wasn't just pain. It was pride, unresolved hope, and forbidden desire. She remembered their first night together, the elegance of surrender, the strength of silence. When she lost a patient during residency, he held her until sleep came. That man had been tender, and now pretended not to care. She mentally counted the days until her departure. Then she lifted her gaze and met his. Her eyes still shimmered behind the guarded expression. For both of them, this was a moment to face what they'd lost, or what they needed to finally let go. Then came the speech. Elias, the groom, nodded. Henrik hesitated for a moment, then walked to the center of the hall. The music faded. Smiles turned in his direction, like a wave ready to break. "Love is temporary insanity, cured by marriage," he began in a low voice. Laughter rippled, thin and cautious. He attempted a brittle smile. "But don't be fooled. Marriage is hard. Love alone is enough. You have to accept each other's flaws." His gaze flicked to Camille. "Sometimes, not even love is enough." The weight of his words landed like a punch. Camille pressed her lips together. Henrik knew exactly how to provoke her. To Elias and Martine, he said, turning to the couple, "May yours be one of the rare unions that lasts. I wish you decades together." The crowd raised their glasses in near silence. He stepped back, leaving behind a toast that felt like a veiled accusation. Martine, ever poised, murmured dryly, "Maybe you should deal with those buried feelings." Henrik slipped away to the terrace. The August night wrapped around him. He loosened his tie and stared at the moonlit lake. He knew Camille would follow. How could you? Her voice sliced through the stillness. He turned slowly. "These people are my friends," she snapped. "They're mine, too," he replied, evenly. It was a confrontation of elegance and ache, and yet something unspoken still pulled them toward each other. When he reached for her hand, she hesitated. "You're making a scene." "No more than we already have," he murmured. There, between polite goodbyes and the chill of the night air, they locked eyes for too long. The music thumped faintly behind them. Their words came softly, guarded by the dark. They agreed to talk, just for a few minutes, away from the crowd, away from the past. The invitation was subtle, her answer unsure. But neither of them was in a hurry to end what had always felt unfinished. Camille held the glass of water. He handed her. Her fingers trembled, and trying to hide the tension made it almost impossible to breathe. Henrik's apartment, elegant, modern, was just a few blocks from the reception. But the refined decor and comfortable silence only made her more uneasy. She walked out onto the terrace, wide, with a view of tree-lined street, and leaned her arms on the stone railing. From the building next door came the muffled sound of a lively party. Music and laughter floated through the night air like echoes from a world that no longer belonged to her. Why had she come? Why, after everything, had she let him bring her here? Maybe she believed she needed to hear it, face to face, that it was truly over. Or maybe some part of her still believed in something. She closed her eyes, and the memories came rushing back. The last night they had shared in the same apartment ended in shouting and accusations. He, tired of her constant absence, blamed her for skipping social events. Gossip from the press and whispers from their inner circle were starting to spread. "I'm done," he said, looking at her like she was a stranger. "I'm done living this half-life with you." She had shouted too, exhausted, yes, but also hurt. How dare he say she didn't care? Lives depended on her at the hospital. 24-hour shifts. Emergencies. Surgeries requiring absolute precision. How could he not understand? He claimed she used work as an excuse, that she was running from what they had. That night, Camille slept in the guest room. The next morning, she left for good. She let out a breath. Whatever they were trying to rebuild now, speaking on this terrace almost civilly, it no longer existed. It was a ruin, with traces of passion still clinging to the walls. Henrik appeared with a bottle of champagne. His tie was gone, 2 buttons of his shirt undone. The woody scent of his cologne reached her before he did. "What are we celebrating?" she asked, her voice measured. "Our absurdly civilized divorce," he replied, pouring 2 glasses. She took the drink. Her hands were still shaking. "Because our lawyers wrote every clause. That was your call. I would have preferred to settle it between us. You know why I didn't." He looked at her a second longer than necessary. "Maybe you were afraid we'd end the way we always did. You yelling at me and me shutting you up with pleasure." Camille flushed but kept her posture. "Maybe my choice was wiser. Or cowardly." She lifted her chin. "I needed a fresh start, and that's what I did. Sold my apartment, my car. I'm leaving." He studied her. "Where are you going?" "To Africa. Volunteering with a humanitarian organization. They desperately need surgeons there." Silence stretched between them. "You left that prestigious position?" he asked, nearly in disbelief. "I couldn't stand the politics. I wanted to operate, to heal, not play games or flatter egos. Dr. Moritz is brilliant, but a tyrant. I didn't want to become that." "So now you're heading off to a conflict zone, thinking you'll find yourself?" She turned to him, steady. "This has nothing to do with you. Henrik, Not this time. I want to use what I've learned for something greater. I need this. But you admitted that part of it was to prove something to me. He shot back, his voice laced with irony. She paused. Damn it. Why had she said that? It was impulsive and taken out of context. Then tell me, Camille, why did you come tonight? She didn't answer, just watched him, breathing in the scent of his skin, remembering everything they had shared. Maybe that was it. One last look, a farewell before leaving for good. You weren't honest with Timo, she murmured at last. He raised an eyebrow. I was honest. I'm over you. Maybe I still want you. But love? That's over, sweetheart. The words cut like a knife. Camille knew that if she didn't speak now, she'd never get another chance. And those women, she asked, stepping closer until their bodies almost touched, were they your way of proving I didn't matter? He grabbed her wrist. You don't have that kind of power over me. But his body told another story. She felt it, his response to her touch. Her hand slid along his thigh, deliberate. He shut his eyes for a moment, struggling for control. What the hell are you doing? Maybe I came tonight for this. Closure. Our way. He gripped her firmly, his voice low. This is just pleasure. If that's what you want. It means nothing. But in his eyes there was everything. Desire, anger, longing. She tugged at his belt. He didn't stop her. On the terrace, under the dark sky, they made love like nothing else existed, as if they were still one body, one memory. He took her with fury and tenderness, and she gave herself with the passion of someone who knew it would be the last time. No words, just breath, skin, and urgency. The world vanished, and they disappeared into the touch that had always pulled them back. Hours later, Camille left the apartment without a sound. Henrik remained, alone in the bed where he once vowed never to let her return. But she had come back, and now she was gone again. The next morning, at the Weiss Industries headquarters, the day began like any other, except for Henrik. The way of the night before echoed in every long pause, every strained movement. Well, that was invigorating. Alaric's voice sounded dry as he caught up with his younger brother in the polished marble corridor of Weiss Industries. Henrik ignored the sarcasm, his gaze already fixed on his wristwatch. The board meeting had dragged on, and he was now 15 minutes late for his rendezvous with Camille and their lawyers. Don't get me wrong, Alaric continued with his characteristically composed tone. I appreciate your new approach. Heaven knows our staff deserves more flexible time off. But what do you expect will happen if everyone decides to take time off at once? That's not going to happen, Henrik replied impatiently. Our system is self-regulating. Employees are involved in scheduling. There are studies on that. Studies, Alaric muttered, furrowing his brow. Let's see how that works come Christmas, when no one wants to work. Henrik said nothing. They stood before the glass elevator that descended to Weiss Industries' lobby, offering expansive views of Neuchâtel's rooftops. He understood that he was appending deeply rooted traditions. He knew Alaric, whose political career was on a rise, whose reputation was pristine, considered his changes dangerously radical. You're pushing for a cultural shift, Alaric continued. And it's not just a message, it's your style. You need to allow people time to adjust. They'll adapt, Henrik replied, flatly. And eventually they'll thank me. Alaric managed a tense half-smile, assuming they don't revolt first. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside, and the doors hissed shut. Henrik crossed his arms, jaw set. I thought you said you'd let me run things my way. I did, Alaric admitted. Before you started rewarding employees with medals and turning annual planning into a gamified competition. This isn't an arcade. It's one of Switzerland's most respected family-run foundations. Our family built it over decades. Henrik looked out at the Alps ridgeline. I know exactly where I am, Alaric. I just don't want to get lost inside it. The elevator stopped at the ground floor. A palpable silence settled between them. You're sure all this energy isn't about the divorce? Henrik checked his watch again. It's final in a few minutes. Actually, I'm already late. That's not an answer. Henrik hesitated, his eyes fixed on the pale gray marble floor. Frankie said you've been different, Alaric pushed. Irritable, impulsive. She's worried. I've got too much on my mind. Alaric studied him. Do you still feel something for her? That was the question he didn't want to hear. Not from his brother. Not from anyone. All the prior night, he tried not to think. To forget. The speech. The fight on the terrace. The touch. The night ending exactly how it began. Destroying each other. No, he said finally. I don't feel anything anymore. Signing the papers will free me. I hope so, Alaric replied softly. Use this as a real restart. Henrik, a real chance to figure out what you want from life. That doesn't come twice. Henrik looked at him. Since when did you get philosophical? Alaric's lips curved into a small smile. Ever since I married the right woman. Funny how that happens. He stepped away, headed across the lobby to find his wife. Henrik watched him for a moment, then turned toward the room where Camille and the lawyers awaited. It was time to finish this. He entered with purposeful steps. The room was sleek, glass and steel, with panoramic views over the city. He seated himself opposite the two lawyers, his own, Pierre Lafont, and Camille's, a respected advisor from the diplomatic quarter. Camille didn't look at him. She wore a white blouse, a blue patterned scarf, and dark slacks. Her hair was up in a bun, understated. But something about her reminded him why it all began. Pierre began reviewing the terms. Properties to be divided, her owning the chalet in Crans, Montana, the Neuchâtel apartment to be sold, with proceeds split evenly. Henrik nodded, hardly listening. Season tickets to the Neuchâtel Opera go to Camille, her lawyer added. The hockey season tickets go to you. Of course, Henrik murmured. He heard the rest as if submerged. Insurance policies, bank accounts, artwork, golf memberships. Keep everything, he said suddenly. I just want the Pyrenees painting. Silence. The lawyer made a note. Henrik stood and walked to the windows. A late winter sky gray with gathering clouds. He felt disconnected as men continued talking behind him. Camille remained frozen like a statue. Then he turned. That was enough. Stop, he said, cutting off the lawyer. Camille, are you all right? She lifted her face. Perfect, she replied coldly. May we continue? The lawyer asked. No, Henrik said, holding her gaze. I'm not signing. Camille straightened. Excuse me? I want more time. Henrik, my flight's in 3 weeks. I need this settled. You do, too. I'm not sure yet. Why? Henrik didn't respond. He only stood firm, arms folded. Camille's lawyer intervened, surprised. Mr. Weiss, the process is finalized, reviewed, approved. Once she leaves the country, communications will be limited. She spent a year avoiding me, Henrik countered. She can wait a few more months. The two lawyers exchanged glances. Camille rose slowly. Can you give us a minute? Once alone, she advanced. Wasn't last night enough? You wanted that too, he answered, unmoving. Maybe even more than I did. Don't toy with me, Henrik. He walked closer. The tension between them surged again. Why not? You toyed with me for months, disappeared. Left me waiting for an answer that never came. Because I had to run from it all. From us. From repeating the cycle that destroyed us. You ran. Just like that. I tried to save us. No, Camille. You tried to save yourself. She inhaled as if to steady herself. But her eyes said everything. He opened the door. Safe trip. I hope you find what you're looking for. And he left, leaving behind him signed papers and everything they built together. What do you mean he didn't sign? Her father's voice, Professor Emile Bissett, echoed through the dining room, amplifying the tension in Camille's head. She placed her spoon down onto the soup bowl, pushing it away as nausea swept over her. He said he needed more time, she replied calmly, meeting her father's gray eyes, the look he always wore whenever Henrik's name was mentioned. More time for what? He snapped. To collect another pretty face for his roster? I don't know. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I leave on Friday, and I can't delay waiting for him to think straight. I'll put David Lemieux in charge of this case, Emile said firmly. Dr. Meyer is more than capable of handling it, she answered, referring to her lawyer. Please, Father, this is my issue. Don't get involved. Meyer is honorable, but cautious, he insisted. David would resolve it in hours. No, she hesitated. Yes, after Henrik walked out of the lawyer meeting 2 weeks earlier, without signing anything. Everything hung in the air, but still, she would prefer to handle it herself. Fine, Emile shrugged, clearly saying the opposite. But don't think you're handling this well. You should never have given him the space to back down. Camille picked up her wine glass. Aside from scalpels and diagnoses, what did he think she handled well? She had spent her life trying to meet her father's standards, a revered surgeon with an international reputation whose shadow suffocated her. Your father only wants what's best for you, dear, her mother said gently, trying to soften the tension. Camille knew Emile would never approve of Henrik. Perhaps he saw in him a younger reflection of himself. Cold ambition, natural charm, unshakable confidence. A man who, decades ago, married a secretary, then betrayed her with a brilliant colleague for intellectual fascination. But Henrik never crossed that line. Even in their worst storms, he never sought comfort in another woman. Their rift was about pride, not betrayal, distance when they needed closeness most. Her mother smiled, peaceful and soothing. I don't like the idea of you going there, Camille. It's so far, so unstable. And what if something happens? They need me there, Camille replied firmly. We discussed this already. The situation has worsened, Emile insisted. New reports coming in. The hospital is safer now, but the surrounding areas remain unpredictable. Rebels crossing borders. It's unreliable terrain. Camille listened, accepting the risk. She wasn't unafraid, but for the first time in years, she felt clarity, purpose. I'm not going to change my mind. I suspected as much, her father said, signaling for the maid to clear the dishes. So I contacted an old colleague in Geneva. He arranged something for you. A room at the Hotel Montserrat, minutes from the mission site. Enhanced security. Private transport. You'll have an escort every day. She stared at him, stunned. Father, you can't decide for me. I wouldn't need to if you weren't so stubborn. A big part of this trip is working with the team, she said. I want to collaborate, share experiences. One of the coordinators will be at Montserrat too. You can join him. She rolled her eyes. You need to let go of controlling my life. Do you know how many foreigners have been kidnapped there in the past 6 months? He asked, gesturing with his fork. Alarmingly high numbers, Camille. If not for you, then for us. We don't want sleepless nights imagining the worst. She sighed, despite her frustration with his interference. His concern was real. Okay, she conceded. But if you make one more call, touch another piece behind the scenes, I cancel hotel and go with the team to the housing instead. Agreed. She nodded. The maid arrived with the main course. The smell of meat turned her stomach. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. No, she stood abruptly and rushed to the bathroom. She barely made it before vomiting into the toilet. The irony hit hard. She, who never fell ill, was incapacitated on the eve of her trip. Henrik used to tease that her immune system was made of steel. But now, she wiped her forehead. 3rd day of nausea. The memory of that final night with him cut through her mind like a blade. They had always been cautious. Always. But back in the dining room, she let her parents know she'd sleep at home. Beth made her a tea and tucked her into bed. The night stretched long, her thoughts hammering. What if it's not just a virus? 2 days later, unable to ignore it, she went for her final checkup before the journey, to receive her last vaccine. Her colleague, Dr. Joan Gibson, frowned the moment she walked in. You're looking pale. Something wrong. Camille hesitated, then asked, could you add a pregnancy test panel? Joanne's eyes widened. You and... Camille's expression answered for her. The test came first. Minutes later, Joanne returned, her face calm, professional. Camille already knew. You're pregnant. Just like that. 2 words rewriting everything. She sat in stunned silence. She wanted to feel joy. She tried, but nothing came. Their options... No! She cut in, firmly. Joanne nodded, silent. She ran the rest of the tests and noted the rare blood type. Camille responded automatically, detached. She left the office and walked to the nearby park. She sat on a bench, clutching mint tea, watching the leaves fall, autumn's early breath of a new cycle. How did this even happen? Henrik made it clear. He never wanted children. The thought terrified him. And now, after that final night, full of pride, anger, longing, Camille carried within her the one thing that would bind them forever, and perhaps tear them further apart. She stayed until evening. The wind chilled her skin, yet fear froze her soul. She would tell him, yes, but not now, not face to face. Once she was settled, she'd call. Then he could deal with the news at distance. She needed to go. She needed to move. Alone, Henrik was leaving a meeting at the Weiss Industries headquarters in Neuchâtel when he was summoned by the receptionist. He's requesting you, Mr. Weiss. It's urgent. Line 3. Call from Dr. Joan Gibson's clinic. Furrowing his brow, he tucked a stack of documents under one arm, espresso in hand, and walked to the reception phone. He answered with a restrained sigh. Henrik Weiss. Mr. Weiss? This is Rebecca, Dr. Gibson's assistant. I called Camille's residence, but couldn't reach her. I found your number listed as an emergency contact. An alarm went off in Henrik's mind. Of course. Camille is traveling today, so she may not have answered. Oh, I thought I might catch her before her departure. Has she already left? I can't say for sure, he replied irritably. I understand. We need to relay some test results. Do you know how I might reach her? I doubt she's still available, he said. What tests are these? There was a pause breath on the other end. Routine exam for a pregna. Her voice cracked. Routine exams. Sorry, Mr. Weiss. The word hit him like a blow. Wait, you were going to say pregnancy? Camille is pregnant? I'm sorry. I really can't comment on that. Put Dr. Gibson on the line immediately. She's with a patient right now. Then interrupt her. I'll come down there myself. Silence. Then another voice, a firmer, more mature tone, came through. Henrik. Dr. Gibson. Your assistant called me by mistake, but she already revealed what matters. Camille is pregnant. Henrik. Rebecca shouldn't have. I understand medical confidentiality, but since the privacy is broken, it's only courteous to confirm, to avoid legal risk. A heavy, guilt-laden sigh. She wanted to be the one to tell him. Well, she won't. Henrik hung up. His brain raced. He strode to his car, tossed a briefcase into the passenger seat, and started the engine, hands trembling. Only then did he notice the espresso cup still perched on top of the car, a runaway cup now likely rolling through the streets. It didn't matter. When he arrived at the elegant building, Henrik took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Emil answered almost immediately. Henrik? What a surprise. No small talk. We both know you've never tolerated me, Henrik said, stepping inside without hesitation. I'd tolerate you more if you signed the divorce. That's not going to happen. Camille is pregnant. Emil's wife appeared in the hallway. Her face went pale. Pregnant. You didn't know? She shook her head, stunned. She was here on Sunday. She felt sick, but we thought it was just the flu. She left knowing she's carrying my child. Emil raised his voice. Watch what you say. I'll say what needs to be said. And I want the address where she's staying. The doctor exhaled, defeated. She's at the Hotel du Soleil, near the Central Mission. Henrik nodded. Thank you. I'll be in touch. That night, back home, with a glass of cognac in hand, Henrik stood on the balcony staring at the starry sky. Every point of light seemed to mock his ignorance. She knew, and she left anyway. He called Frankie, his sister-in-law, and asked her to cancel his week's schedule. Then he called his private pilot and arranged a flight in 2 days. Destination, Africa. He finished the drink in one swig. The burn in his throat was nothing compared to the one in his chest. Camille thought she could decide on her own, that she could carry his child across the world without telling him. But no, she made her choice alone. Now it was his turn. Henrik had never wanted children, not out of dislike, out of fear. His childhood, filled with silence, absence, and loss, convinced him it was better not to grow roots. But now, there was no more running. A child, his blood. Camille had taken more than a suitcase with her. She carried the only part of him he'd never offered anyone else. She wanted distance. He was about to show her what it really meant to be connected forever. It was still hot at 8 in the evening as the sun dipped behind the red-tinged mountains of the African region where Camille Bissett was working. Shielding her eyes, she walked a short distance from the field hospital to the Hotel du Soleil. It was only her second day volunteering with the mission, but her body already felt like it was begging for mercy. She'd always loved summer, but this dry, searing heat was unlike anything she had known. The air seemed to suck the last bit of energy from her sweat-drenched skin. It might have been bearable if she weren't pregnant, if the nausea hadn't drained her since she landed. The physical and emotional demands of the hospital were far beyond what she'd expected. In just one day, Camille had performed emergency surgery on an elderly man injured by a militia-planted explosive trap, carried out a C-section on a young mother, and spent the rest of her shift treating malaria, skin infections, and respiratory complications. All of it in an improvised medical center with no real equipment. She'd never forget the faces she saw there, the pain, the silent dignity. Her supervisor had warned her, "Keep some emotional distance, doctor. Around here, hearts break faster than bones." Camille thanked the NGO guard who escorted her and entered the hotel. After a hot shower in the high colonial-style bed suite, she forced herself to go down for dinner. She ordered something light, a salad and grilled chicken, and barely touched it. She took her tea out to the open-air terrace, where the breeze was more generous than the weak air conditioning inside. The place was empty, except for a tall man leaning against a restaurant wall, smoking. She averted her gaze. She wanted peace. The oval pool, glowing silently, looked like an oasis. But she didn't even have the strength to fetch her swimsuit. She sank into the chair. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, instinctively, something had changed. A figure was emerging from the shadows, walking toward her. Tall, steady, dressed in black. Her body reacted before her mind did. She stood up abruptly, but as the man stepped into the terrace light, her eyes widened. Henrik. He stopped in front of her, close enough for Camille to see the unrelenting gleam in his steel-blue eyes. A shiver ran down her spine. "When exactly were you planning to tell me, Camille? At what point did you think it was okay to hide from me the fact that I'm going to be a father?" She felt the blood drain from her face. How? How did you find out?" "I got a call from your doctor's clinic. The assistant made a mistake and slipped up." His eyes flashed. "And the hotel?" "Your father gave me the name. He didn't hold back on what he thought of your decision." She blinked, dizzy. "You told him?" "Yes. And yes, he was just as shocked as I was to learn you crossed the continent pregnant, working exhausting shifts without saying a word." He crossed his arms. "That's reckless. I'm healthy, Henrik. I'm in the first trimester. There's nothing reckless about continuing with my life. I'm not the first pregnant woman to work. This isn't just about that." He stepped closer. "Your supervisor told me you got sick yesterday. No one knew." Camille's stomach tightened into a knot. "You went to the hospital?" "I'll go wherever I have to," he replied, calm but firm. She lost her breath. He was studying her, trying to decipher her. "When were you planning to tell me? After you'd sorted it all out in your rational mind? Once you decided I was ready to hear the parenting terms you drafted without me?" "Henrik." "No," he raised a hand. "I know what you did. You tried to shut me out of a decision that involves both of us. That's not just selfish. It's cruel." She shrank. Her body stiffened. Her heart raced. "I just needed time to process. That's all. And you thought it was reasonable to hide it from me while making your decisions alone? Going on a mission? Taking risks? His voice rose. No, Camille, this is not something you get to decide alone. She touched his arm, trying to defuse the tension. Let's sit. Talk. But Henrik stepped back. We've talked enough. Now we go by my rules. Rules? In 10 minutes, you're packing. The plane's at the airport. You've got to be kidding. I'm not. Your supervisor's on board. The mission can resume later, when you're ready. But now we go. I'm not going. Yes, you are. She backed up, almost stumbled. He caught her by the waist, firm, his eyes wide. You can't just decide for me. No? Watch me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held them back. Henrik wiped her face gently with his fingers. His voice softened to a whisper. I'm not taking this from you. I'm postponing it, for both our sakes. You just want to control everything, and you just want to run from everything. I'm not running. This trip was planned. Planned before you knew you were pregnant. Her strength faltered, and for the first time, doubt crept in. Could he be right? I'll go with you. But one condition, no orders. Henrik nodded, no argument. They went to her room. She packed her small suitcase. In silence, 2 men waited in the car that drove them to the airport. The company's private jet was ready. Camille fell asleep as soon as she sat down. Hours later, when she woke, the sky outside was dark. She stretched, looked out the window. No cities, no lights. Where are we? Henrik didn't look up from his papers. Minutes from landing, a private island in the Mediterranean, a friend's chalet. You said you were taking me home. And I will, in a few days. We're here to talk, to fix what's still fixable. This is insane, Henrik. We're not leaving that island until we can look at each other without resentment. And yes, he turned to her with intensity, I'll use whatever means necessary. Camille crossed her arms. She wanted to scream, but fatigue won out. She'd try to escape in the morning, after landing. They were taken to a dock and from there by boat to a quiet island, lit by torches and stars. The surrounding forest was dense. The air smelled of jasmine. Henrik helped her into a jeep. She closed her eyes, worn out from nausea and tension. Sleep, he said simply. We've still got 20 minutes. And for the first time in days, she obeyed. Camille woke to the bright sunlight reflecting off the blue lake. The light streamed through the open windows, warming the white sheets. She might have stayed there longer, immersed in the tranquility of the scenery, if she hadn't remembered where she was. And with whom? The memories returned in fragments. Henrik carrying her from the boat to the bedroom, his body tense, his face unreadable. She had barely kept her eyes open, just long enough to see he wouldn't stay. She'd buried herself in lavender-scented sheets and surrendered to a deep sleep. Now, sitting on the edge of the bed, Camille stared at the closed door. She needed to get out. Fast. She slipped on the robe draped over the armchair and looked for her bag by the window. She searched through it. Something was missing. Her journal, filled with medical records and personal thoughts, had disappeared. She remembered placing it there on the boat. Henrik. A chill of anger ran down her spine. She opened the door and walked through the silent hallway. Room after room. Nothing. She went downstairs to the spacious living room with lake-facing windows. Empty. The high-ceilinged library, filled with the scent of old paper, deserted. Finally, the kitchen. Still no sign of him. Camille cursed under her breath, knowing Henrik. He was probably jogging on the beach or slicing to the lake in some speedboat, thinking he could fix everything on impulse. She rummaged through drawers, looking for a phone. Nothing. Not in the kitchen, not in the library. The house, luxurious and secluded, seemed meticulously designed for silence and isolation. She barely had time to react when Henrik came into the back door, sweaty, his shirt clinging to his chest, his shorts still damp from the run. Looking for something? He asked casually. Camille slammed the drawer shut and turned, arms crossed. My notebook. Where is it? With me. He shrugged. And that's where it'll stay. Camille's blood boiled. She marched up to him, eyes blazing. This is insane, Henrik. Give it back. Now. No, we're here to talk. You're not going to grab your things and vanish like last time. Even if I wanted to, I don't even know where I am. Perfect, then. She stared at him, stunned. Do you realize what you're doing? This is illegal detention. You're my wife. Try proving you're being held against your will in a summer house by the lake. He gave a sarcastic smile. Now go get dressed. It's a beautiful day. Camille lunged forward, fists clenched. Henrik caught her wrist before she could hit him. So that a no, I guess? She tried to pull away, frustrated. Let me call my father right now. If you do that, I swear I'll consider shared custody, and I won't involve anyone else. He held firm, voice steady. You left hiding the pregnancy. Do you really think I'm going to let you slip away again? Not this time. Now it's my turn. She closed her eyes for a second, exhausted. Henrik, this isn't the way. It's the only way you left me. Camille met his gaze, feeling the weight behind his eyes. Beneath the anger, was it determination or desperation? We've already tried, Henrik, and we failed. We tried running, he corrected, calmer now. Now we try staying. For each other. For the baby. And what if I want to be happy? With someone who might one day actually love me? He looked at her, unwavering. You don't want anyone else. If you did, you'd be gone forever. You wouldn't have run in the dark, trying to escape what you feel. Say you feel nothing. She tried, and failed. Henrik brought one hand to her back, stepping in closer. Prove it, he murmured. Kiss me now with no emotion, and I promise I'll call the boat. We'll leave. Camille swallowed hard. This is a game, Henrik. No, it's the only way I know to tell if there's still something between us. She hesitated, then gave in. She touched her lips to his, briefly, a hollow kiss, but he didn't pull away. A real kiss, Camille. She closed her eyes. One last test. If she got through this, she'd be free. She leaned in again. This time, she let go. His taste, the familiarity, the memory of so many nights. Henrik responded with calm, depth, and resolve. Her body surrendered before she even realized it. When she pulled back, she was breathless. He smiled, satisfied. See? It's not something you forget. You're still here. With me. Camille stepped back, confused. She had wanted that, and that scared her more than any forced captivity. Take me back, she pleaded, voice cracking. We can talk, but take me home. Henrik shook his head. This is where we stop running, where we learn what it means to care for someone other than ourselves. He walked out, leaving her there, heart pounding. Camille dressed in one of the swimsuits he'd left for her and went down to the beach. The day was bright, the lake calm, the mountains in the distance etched like a painting. She sat on a rock, far from the house, trying to collect her thoughts. Henrik swam in the distance. Strong, determined. She hated him for bringing her here against her will, but a part of her understood. He wanted to get it right. He wanted to give their child a better start than he'd had. She thought about the future, living as partners, without love, only for the sake of the child, or separated, sharing custody and affection. Neither option felt right. Neither was painless. But one thing was clear. She had to protect herself. And the baby. Maybe there was a third way. One built on respect, mutual care, a workable coexistence. As long as she didn't lose herself again. Camille watched the sunlight glint off the water and squinted. She would make her own plan. And if Henrik wanted to be part of it, he would have to accept it. The sun was setting over the Moroccan Mediterranean, painting the sky gold and intensifying the tropical scents around the chalet. Henrik Weiss had been about to ask the cook to bring Camille a cup of tea, thinking she might be unwell, when she appeared on a red silk deck, delicate, almost fragile, patterned with tiny white flowers. Henrik watched her. She'd lost weight. Her pallor was evident. For the baby's sake. He needed to understand the limits of her nausea. Perhaps tonight would be the moment he learned how to cope with it all. Camille rested her elbows on the railing, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Her chin was still lifted, defiant, almost challenging. He drew in a slow breath. Can I steal 15 minutes of your day? She stayed motionless. He offered her the non-alcoholic champagne. How are you feeling? Nausea usually eases after a few weeks. You've lost weight. Isn't the baby at risk? Women often lose weight in the first trimester and regain it later. I'm not an exception. Henrik smoothed the lapel of his shirt. You're nervous? Of course I am, she replied firmly. Having a baby changes everything. A life depending entirely on me. On us, he corrected, placing the bottle on the side table. You're not alone. She let out a delicate laugh. I've learned to despise men who say that. You don't feel the nausea, the sleepless nights making formula. A bottle will never replace anything. We can take turns, he offered, expression neutral. It's not magical, but it works. She inhaled, steadying herself, took a sip. You kidnapped me to impose your vision, and filled the silence with more reasons. Henrik held her gaze. We created a life together. I thought it was time to acknowledge that, and to make a toast. Camille, surprised, tilted her head slowly. So, a toast is deserved, after all. You agree, he smiled. She set the glass down, her fists clenched. I agree that we should raise this child together, if we remain civilized, but with rules. Which rules? 1, no intimacy. We will be parents, with respect, education. No emotional involvement. Henrik frowned. You want a loveless marriage? Exactly, she replied without blinking. I will not repeat what happened in that room. I will not confuse our responsibility with emotional surrender. He exhaled, watching the gentle breeze play across the lake. Fine, we'll do it your way, at least until you decide to change the rules, he admitted. But know that my tolerance is limited. She met his cold stare. Whoever flees their boundaries before facing them calls at wisdom? His eyes darkened. If this is what you accept, we'll continue like this. But I'm not the coward you think I am. I want to build something beyond resentment. She looked at the glasses and sighed. I have my reasons. Too old an experience. He encouraged. Tell me now. Let's do it. She looked out over the lake for a long moment. When she spoke, her lips were tense. Should I go first? Parenting together would be good for the child. But if you keep pressuring me with decisions I wasn't part of, I walk as soon as we get back to Neuchâtel. Agreed, he replied softly. But we need to decide everything before the baby arrives. Home, education, routine. She nodded with tired eyes. To give birth without support, I won't do that, he suggested kindly. I spoke with a colleague. There's a house for sale in a quiet residential street, garden, calm. Maybe it's a compromise. She shrugged, hesitant. I need to reflect on this and so much more. Night fell in silence. Henrik called Lucy to serve dinner and remained beside Camille as she ate. Later, he pulled a candlelit chair next to her. Gentle conversation shifted into candid dialogue, revealing weaknesses, mutual mistakes, slow understanding. When the meal ended, he suggested she go to bed and rest. She hesitated, then agreed. Will you stay? I'll wait here. If you want to talk, I'll be here. She breathed out a soft sigh. Thank you. He leaned his shoulder against the doorway, watching each unsteady step she took away. Seated in the library, he poured a drink and reflected on all he had heard. What she had accused him of hadn't been spoken aloud, but it had touched his heart. Someone found the courage to publicly mark limits. He took another sip and stared at the dark lake through the window. He knew that in 1 week, everything would change. When Camille awoke that morning, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. The night had been spent turning over their conversation in her mind. Henrik had spoken of rebuilding, of partnership, of a future, words that refused to leave her thoughts. Henrik approached, his voice low and careful not to intrude on her space. Still thinking about what we talked about? He paused, watching her closely. I know how hard it is to ignore something once you recognize what could be built. We've already talked about this. I was clear, Henrik. I know your silences, Camille, and this is the kind that comes right before a big decision. It's just hormones, she replied, looking away. Henrik let out a soft chuckle, not sarcastic. Funny how you're still beautiful, even like this. Pregnancy looks like a quiet revolution on you. She crossed her arms. Let's change the subject. Why did you accept a position at Weiss Industries after denying for so long that you wanted it? He opened a bottle of wine. Because I realized I didn't want my brother to handle everything alone. It was time to take responsibility and do things my way. You changed your mind just like that? I saw I could make a difference. Reshape the company under a new vision. Our generation sees things differently, and I wanted to prove that to myself. Camille studied him. The tension on his face was subtle, but this conversation clearly meant more to him than he let on. And that phone call this morning? Henrik turned his gaze to the horizon. Just business. She asked again gently, business that made you nervous? He took a breath, as if weighing how much he could share. Let's just say an old operation is resurfacing, a mistake my father made, and we're still paying for it. She waited silently. He didn't elaborate. The subject drifted like a shadow and lingered in the air. What about you and Alaric? She asked. I never understood what happened between you two. Henrik leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My father made a lot of mistakes. Alaric wanted revenge. I wanted to rebuild. That drove us apart. Revenge? Henrik nodded. A foreign magnate sold our father a shell company in the late 60s. When the truth came out, Weiss Industries nearly collapsed. My father spiraled into depression. He tried to maintain a political career anyway. And in the end, he took his own life. Alaric never forgave the man who caused it. Camille swallowed hard. That's awful. Did he go after him? He almost did. Tracked him down years later. But in the end, he backed down. Maybe he listened to his conscience, or someone who loved him. She looked down. That must have been a dark time for you both. It was, but we survived. And the resentment stayed between us. I wanted to move on. Alaric wanted justice on his own terms. To him, I was a coward. The traitor. Henrik picked up a stone and threw it into the water. But no one sees that sometimes forgiving is harder than hating. Camille stayed quiet. Finally, she whispered, You never told me any of this. Not about your pain. Not about those women. He looked her in the eye. They were a distraction, a mistake. But I don't justify them. I just want you to know none of them ever mattered. I was hurt. I felt abandoned. Her eyes widened. That was more than Henrik had ever revealed. And I felt rejected, like you'd given up on me. Her voice dropped. I left because I didn't know who you were anymore. And even so, he added softly, I'm still here. You're still here. That doesn't fix everything. But maybe it gives us a place to start. She looked at him for a long moment, heart tight. He still loved her. She knew it. But was that enough? Promise me you'll respect my pace. No games. No pressure. I promise, he said firmly. Camille stood barefoot in the sand and walked toward the edge of the dock, away from the noise, away from the words. Her mind repeated one thought. The reason I already know. Now I need to understand the heart. Henrik kept his word. For 3 days and nights, he didn't touch Camille or bring up anything beyond the essentials. Their conversations remained light. Weather, the days, outings, idle observations. They acted like civil acquaintances as they explored the island by foot or boat, pausing beneath the sun and diving among the crystal-clear reefs. Camille could spend days in that tranquil, blue calm, buried in silence and avoiding confrontation. But when the mind quieted, the truths emerged. Her life had changed irreversibly. By accepting this trip, she had given him a second chance, a chance at rebuilding and forgiveness, and maybe even peace. That afternoon, sitting at the edge of the pool with a book in her lap, she tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. Fear walked beside her in silence, recalling her parents' constant arguments, the imbalance between devotion and submission. She had promised herself never to live that kind of relationship, yet something in her still believed that Henrik might feel more than he let on. He appeared at the end of the day, walking from the chalet. His face carried the same controlled expression of recent days. When she swam to the edge, he reached out a hand, helping her up. His gaze swept over her shoulders, and a slight frown betrayed concern. "You're sunburned." "The sun fooled me." Henrik wrapped her in a soft towel, his gestures measured, almost gentle. She looked up at him. "You can share your thoughts with me. I don't want to distract you from the decisions you need to make." "Are you afraid?" "Of course I am. Having a child changes everything. It's a life, and that life depends on me, on us." "Exactly. On us. You're not alone." She kept her expression firm. "I want to try. But this time, it's all or nothing. I grew up in a war zone. I won't let our child go through that." His face softened slightly. "Will you trust me?" "Yes, but I need to keep working. I can't give up my career. It's part of who I am." Henrik hesitated. His eyes dimmed a little. "All right, we'll find a compromise. We've messed up a lot, Camille. But this we won't mess up." She nodded, still uncertain. The tension between them hovered like the warm breeze rising from the lake. Later, he approached her again. "Arthur invited us for dinner tonight. Would you like to go?" She raised an eyebrow. "So now I'm allowed to go because I'm behaving?" He smiled, a spark in his eyes. "I'm accepting the challenge. And yes, it's an invitation from a good friend." Camille chose a light, elegant dress that hugged her figure gently. When she met Henrik on the terrace, he was already waiting, his white shirt setting off his tan skin. His gaze moved slowly over her body, lingering at the subtle curve above her waist. "You look stunning." She stopped in front of him, heart racing. "Thank you." He touched her chin with one hand and placed the other around her waist, pulling her close. "I can tell my always composed wife is nervous." "Hardly. I thought we agreed to be honest. If I'm being honest, I'd trade this dinner for a night alone with you in a heartbeat." A flush rose to her cheeks. "Henrik," he leaned toward her ear. "The only question would be how and where." She stepped back slightly, her eyes shining. "But let's go to dinner. It would be rude not to." "Yes, let's. But first, I'm going to kiss my wife." She hesitated, but his lips shattered her defenses. The kiss was slow, deep, as if inviting her back to something that had never truly ended. When he pulled away, her eyes were cloudy. He smiled and slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, old, familiar gold ring. "I want you to wear this." Camille felt her chest tighten as she recognized the wedding band, the same one she'd lost years ago while washing her hands. "You kept it?" "Of course I did." He gently slid the ring onto her finger. "This time it stays, through good times and bad." She took a deep breath, swallowing her emotion. "Let's see which ones went out." He whispered against her ear. "Stop overthinking. Just come with me." Henrik led her to the car. Outside, the violet-tinted sky seemed to promise that the night ahead held more than just polite conversation. What came next was still unwritten. He had already tested the limits of human endurance, running an ultramarathon across the Sahara Desert 2 years ago, where survival was the only goal. 5 days of scorching heat, makeshift tents, and a body pushed to exhaustion, always at the mercy of the desert wildlife. After finishing that ordeal, he thought he'd never again experience the fear of death so intimately. He was wrong. Waking up next to Camille that morning, with her legs intertwined with his in soft dawn light drifting through the barely closed curtains, stirred in his chest a familiar tension. But now the danger came from within, from what she still meant to him. The previous night had been no physical release. It had been emotional surrender, and that left him vulnerable. He rose slowly, dressed in his running clothes, and went out to the beach. The damp sand softened his steps as he ran beneath a clear sky, trying to calm his racing thoughts. But even physical exhaustion couldn't silence the emotional turmoil. She disarmed him, and even more so the night before, when Camille had saved a boy's life with fearless, surgical precision by diving from a cliff. In that moment, he realized, uncomfortably, how much he had underestimated the importance of her vocation. He despised himself for it, because he knew he could never do what she had. At the end of his run, he stopped and wiped his face with his shirt. He needed to regain control. He had what he'd wanted, a truce with her. But could he live a functional, rational marriage without succumbing to love that had nearly destroyed them before? Back in the house, the shrill ring of the landline shattered the morning silence. Henrik answered with a measured sigh, already bracing for bad news. Henrik Weiss. Mr. Weiss? David was on line 1. Said it's urgent. Henrik nodded, tension on his face. He lifted the receiver from the fixed phone on the desk. David. Henrik, I'm here with Reg. Legal's on speaker in my office. We need to talk now. Henrik felt his stomach clench. If Reg was directly involved, it was serious. Talk. Reg's voice, low and grave, came through. The recall's confirmed. Hundreds of vehicles are affected. Multiple class action lawsuits already in progress. We're reviewing which ones are legally valid, but honestly, the situation's dire. Henrik placed a hand on his forehead and closed his eyes for a moment, erasing the reality he just heard. Our components are involved. Unfortunately, yes, and there's a strong link to brake failures. 5 deaths, 5 lives lost due to mechanical failures, possibly under his watch. The weight hit him like a punch. Anger, shame, fear, all at once. He had only recently taken charge of Weiss Industries, and now he faced the greatest challenge in the company's history. I'm coming back tomorrow. Understood, replied David. I'm sorry for the timing. Henrik hung up and stood motionless for a few seconds, staring at the lake. The paradise around him contrasted violently with the nightmare unfolding in his mind. When the numbness passed, he turned and returned to the chalet. Camille stood in the kitchen, back to him, wearing a short robe, holding a cup of coffee. He watched her for a long moment, absorbing the image. He still wanted to touch her, even at that risked losing control he fiercely clung to. She turned. You seem different. What happened? We have to return to Neuchâtel tonight. What happened? Legal issues. With the company? A recall. Very serious. She set down the cup. Is it that bad? Very. He approached, resting his hands on the marble countertop, one on each side of her body. Camille looked into his eyes. Do you want to talk about it? I don't have all the details yet. I can pack. We still have the day. We only leave early evening. She nodded slightly, but Henrik noticed something in her gaze had shifted. A distant coldness that enraged him. That same emotional wall had hurt him before. Now, it threatened to return. You're doing it again, he said quietly. Pulling away. Building walls. She crossed her arms. And you're shutting down. I already told you what happened. 5 people died because of faulty products. You think you can handle that alone. Henrik felt a lump in his throat. It's the biggest error in the company's history. It could destroy us. I don't know how to deal with it yet. She moved closer and laid a hand on his arm. Then please don't close the door on us. I'm here. I want to stand by you. He swallowed hard, his eyes burning. That vulnerability disarmed him more than any ultimatum. The hardest part is knowing nothing will bring those lives back, he murmured. But you can do what's right now, she replied softly. Fix what you can. Seek justice. Make it clear that this matters. Henrik looked at her face, her firmness, the silent warmth emanating from her. For a moment, fear gave way to something deeper. Connection, a calm desire born from shared vulnerability. Camille felt it too. The silence between them felt suspended with meaning. When he approached, she didn't pull back. She accepted his touch, not as an escape, but as an answer. He enfolded her gently, respecting her boundaries, leading without urgency. No words, no more pain, no more failures. Just 2 bodies in a shared history attempting to begin again, honestly. Afterward, he held that moment close, standing with her there, as though marking it forever. Deep down, he knew nothing between them had ever been simple. But love, this love, was still real. And now more than ever, he wanted to deserve it. Camille loved Swiss autumn. The clear sky over the old town, golden leaves scattered across the cobblestone sidewalks, and a gentle breeze announcing summer's end. There was beauty in the air. Comfort. She smiled at a small dog sprinting across the street among the dry leaves and continued calmly toward the neighborhood butcher shop. Neuchâtel, with its serene colors, felt made for new beginnings. 3 weeks had passed since they returned from Morocco. Camille now lived in the house Henrik had bought, an old two-story with a lavender garden on a quiet street in Vieilleville, a perfect place to raise their child, and perhaps to give love another chance. She entered the butcher's shop, placed her order, and took a seat by the window to wait. Her mind drifted to the second night they'd reconnected with intensity at the kitchen counter. Not for passion, but for how, after that, he began to soften. Henrik was changing, opening up, letting her share his burdens. And something inside her, something dormant, awakened. Still, Camille felt fear. She loved a man who rarely named his feelings. And she didn't yet know how much she could trust what was between them. Outside, a young woman walked by holding a small child's hand. Camille placed her own hand over her belly, startled by the gentle flutter. She didn't want to fail again. Didn't want to repeat her mother's story or her own. A familiar voice broke her trance. Camille? She turned to find Dr. Franz Moret, her former mentor at Clinique du Lac. Tall, elegant, with penetrating eyes under salt and pepper hair. I thought you were in a humanitarian mission. Plans change, she replied calmly. I'm back for a while. He sat beside her. I'm sorry I didn't hear that from you. I was about to formally invite you to take the position you left open. Are you interested? Camille paused. Her heart skipped a beat. I thought my past spoke for itself. I didn't want to create a personal competition over the job. Dr. Moret raised an eyebrow. You were the obvious choice. No one has convinced me otherwise since you left. If you still want it, you have until the end of the month. She nodded, fighting back emotion. I'll consider it carefully. He kissed her cheek and left. Camille remained there, uncertain. The offer had come at a pivotal moment, a long-held dream in the midst of an uncertain future. Holding her shopping bag, she walked home slowly. Henrik arrived shortly after, visibly tense and with dark circles under his eyes. He placed his briefcase on the table and headed to the kitchen. She stopped what she was doing and gently kissed him. He held her firmly. He looked exhausted and vulnerable. Tough day? We'll announce the recall next week, Henrik sighed. Pressure's increasing. Everyone wants a scapegoat. That's unfair. I want to face this with honesty. But the board wants damage control. She touched his shoulder softly. Doing the right thing is never wrong. He nodded, leaning against the counter, watching her. And your day? I did groceries, walked with Beth, and chose the wine for dinner. Camille! I'm fine, she said, offering a small smile. Henrik studied her for a second, then went for a shower. Shortly after, Frankie and Alaric arrived. She, lively and spontaneous. He, more calm and grounded since reconnecting with his wife. Their presence eased the atmosphere. There was comfort in the bond between the four of them. During dinner, they discussed Alaric's political campaign. He was leading in several districts. Seeing the Weiss brothers in harmony moved Camille deeply. Still, something gnawed at her. The way Alaric looked at Frankie, with such pride, such certainty, made her chest ache. After she cleared dessert plates, Henrik followed her into the kitchen. Leave that for tomorrow. I want to finish now, she replied, focused on the dishes. He pulled her gently around the waist, lifting her face tenderly. What's wrong? Nothing. He kept looking at her. She looked away. I'm just tired. If it's about Dr. Moret. Camille swallowed, trying to steady her emotion. It's not. Frankie appeared in the doorway. Camille smiled politely. Later, they both carried their tea to the deck and sat in the soft night breeze. Henrik has changed since you returned, Frankie observed thoughtfully. He's calmer, more whole. That's you, Camille. Camille lowered her gaze, touched. She wanted to believe that, wanted this new start to be real. Yet she still feared. And that fear made everything feel too fragile. Later, when Frankie and Alaric left, Camille got ready for bed. A hot shower cleared her head. But when Henrik entered the room, their eyes met, tense. I thought that nightgown was banned, he murmured, half smiling. You decided that, she replied frosty. Without warning, Henrik pulled her close, firmly, but not aggressively. We agreed not to play that game anymore. She tried to step back. Now isn't the time. What's happened with you? Camille hesitated, then spoke firmly. Not tonight. Then tell me why, he insisted. She tried to resist, but the words slipped out in a whisper. I'm scared. Of what? Of us. Of what this baby will change. Of giving in and you not being ready. Henrik fell silent, then gently held her hands. I tried hating you for leaving me, but I never could, not even now. You're the only woman I carry in my heart, and I don't know how to live as if that's not true. Camille closed her eyes. Silent tears slid down her cheeks. I still love you, she whispered. And yes, I went to that dinner hoping to find you, hoping there was still something between us. Henrik leaned in and kissed her with a tenderness that said more than words ever could. Camille didn't resist. She kissed him back, urgently, completely. Their desire returned, but it was more than physical. It was a silent confession of what still lingered between them, a pledge sealed in the dark between two souls trying to rebuild. The next morning, Henrik checked his watch for the third time, visibly impatient. Jack Neiman is 10 minutes late. Lucy called through the conference room door. Henrik's face remained composed. The billionaire investor and long-standing corporate rival had chosen this meeting to break the schedule. Henrik knew what was at stake. In just a few hours, he needed to be home beside Camille, preparing for the most important charity gala of the season. Yet there he stood, waiting on a decision that could change everything. He also braced himself for the most consequential board meeting of his life, deciding whether Weiss Industries would take full responsibility for the fatal defective parts recall. He knew what needed doing. It was risky but necessary, and Camille gave him the strength. In recent weeks, she'd been his silent, unwavering anchor. Her loyalty, in its quiet sincerity, was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. She anchored him. Henrik inhaled slowly. He needed to find her that night and say words he never thought he'd say again. But first, Neiman and the board. Alaric arrived from his campaign in Bern, kissed Frankie quietly, and eased into the room, his expression weary. You look exhausted, Henrik observed. Same for you. Are you sure this is the right choice? There's no choice. The public won't tolerate cover-ups. Admit everything, brother. It's all or nothing. Henrik nodded. For the first time in years, he and Alaric were aligned. Strangely and powerfully, that gave him peace. That evening, under the golden glow of candlelight at Grand Hotel Belcourt, beside Lake Neuchâtel, Camille descended the stone staircase in a sapphire blue dress. Simple yet commanding. The gala was the social highlight of the season, and with a key partner of Weiss Industries attending, she hadn't refused the invitation, even though she considered it. Henrik arrived tense and somber, burdened by the weight of the world. Yet the moment he saw her, his eyes softened. Did I mention how stunning you look tonight? Not yet, she said gently, touching his chin. How did the meeting go? The board approved my proposal. We will assume full responsibility. There's no turning back. Camille took his hand. You did what was right. And you always believed it was, he whispered as he kissed her. Thank you for standing by me. She smiled, heart pounding. She expected more. The words he'd never spoken. He sensed it. I want to say so much, but this isn't the time. I know, she replied softly. They moved to their table, joined by the Australian client and Dr. Franz Moret. A queasy feeling stormed in Camille's stomach. She still hadn't told Henrik about the job offer. She hadn't given Dr. Moret her answer. She felt cornered. Henrik noticed. That's Franz Moret? She nodded. Conversation flowed until midway. Franz turned to her. You still haven't answered about the position. Should I assume you're not interested? Henrik's body stiffened. We haven't discussed it yet, Camille replied softly. Dr. Moret turned his gaze to Henrik. Your wife has talent you shouldn't overlook. Henrik spoke bluntly. She's pregnant. Now isn't the time. Camille froze. His words hung heavy. Revealing her pregnancy to strangers? She glared at him, furious. Franz continued. We could accommodate the time off. Better than losing a skilled surgeon like her. Henrik replied coldly, "That's not going to happen. I won't see her juggling surgeries and maternity." Older anger flared inside her. After dinner, they declined drinks. In the car, she finally exploded. "I was willing to refuse a job for you, but you disrespected me. You announced my pregnancy without permission and decided for me. You should have told me. I didn't trust you to hear it calmly. And I was right." Henrik pulled over and turned toward her. "This isn't just about you. That job could wreck everything we built. What will destroy us is you acting like my father. I'm not your possession, Henrik, and I won't watch you sacrifice our family for the same mistakes again." Her voice shook. "You don't want the woman I am. You want one shaped by your idea of perfection, and she doesn't exist." She opened the car door. He grasped her arm. "Don't leave me. Not again. When you're ready to behave like a man who loves, not a coward, let me know." She crossed the street into the night's chill. Henrik stood there, chest burning. Just when he thought he'd won, he realized his greatest battle was yet to come. Henrik stood before Weiss Industries headquarters, a monument of steel and glass reflecting the sky over Neuchâtel. His charcoal gray suit wasn't just a stylistic choice. It was a shield, a symbol of sobriety, of remorse. It was also a silent cry. As he stared up at the tower's upper floors, his heart tightened. This was his father's legacy. The empire he now risked shattering under his command. 5 lives taken. Yet his conviction remained. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only way. He almost heard his father's stern voice thunder in his mind. But he wasn't his father. Never would be, and it was time to prove that. Entering the building with purposeful strides, he swallowed the guilt from Friday night, when he'd hurt Camille by revealing her pregnancy to strangers. He justified his fear by claiming love. But the truth was raw. He loved her to the point of irrationality, afraid of losing her. And if he didn't act now, he would. In the executive wing, he was greeted by Tracy, his PR director. "We have a problem. The victims' families released a statement before our announcement," she said, handing him a report. Henrik scanned the document. The required settlement numbers were astronomical. Weiss could collapse. He shut his eyes and inhaled deeply. "All right, let's do this." The boardroom was packed. Cameras clicked. Microphones awaited questions. Journalists hungry for headlines. The air crackled with tension. For a moment, Henrik's resolve wavered. Then he saw her. Camille stood quietly beside Jack Neiman. Her eyes locked on his, steady and resolute, sent him a message he needed. Don't falter now. It reignited his courage. Tracy introduced him. Henrik stepped to the podium and delivered the statement with clarity. Weiss Industries would assume full responsibility. The company would apologize, compensate the victims, and rebuild its honor, piece by piece. It wasn't the proudest moment in Weiss's history, he concluded, but we will restore trust. That I promise. Silence draped the room. Then came the questions. What would your father say today, Mr. Weiss? Henrik lifted his gaze. That we need to be better. And we will be. Questions followed for nearly an hour, a public trial by quote. But he stayed. He endured. He revealed who he truly was. When Journal Suisse Affaires stood to speak, Henrik glanced back at the crowd. Camille was gone. A shock tore through his chest. But she had been there. She had come. She'd left the door ajar. Now it was on him to walk through and never leave again. Meanwhile, Camille stood before the TV, remote trembling, as the nightly broadcast began with Weiss's press conference. She feared the headlines, that Henrik had been defeated. Inside Beth's apartment, she paced, then surrendered. She switched it on. The anchor solemnly announced. Tonight, Henrik Weiss took one of the most courageous stands in Swiss corporate history. An industry expert confirmed. In 14 years of finance, I've never seen anything like it. He risked all, yet may have saved an empire. Camille placed her hand over her mouth. Tears flowed, warm and silent. A knock at the door. Expecting Beth, her heart leaped. It was Henrik, still in the gray suit, exhausted, unadvanceable, and absolutely irresistible. She opened the door. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. "Beyond you throwing our marriage out the window and giving me an ultimatum on my future?" He lowered his eyes. "I was lost, Camille." I spoke before thinking. Her chest tightened. "I came tonight because I love you, but I cannot carry this relationship alone. I need you whole, Henrik, or we're nothing." He nodded, tears glistening, and reached for her. "Give me a chance. Come with me." They arrived in Vieilleville, not at the old penthouse, but the house they renovated together, the one meant to mark their beginning anew. Camille fell silent as she entered. Candlelight bathed the dark wood-paneled living room. Red roses everywhere. It felt like an intimate refuge, carefully prepared. "I need to tell you a few things," he murmured, but without touch. "I understand. You're right." She crossed her arms. "You may begin." Henrik drew in a breath. "You were my strength today. Every time I wanted to retreat, I remembered what you said, and who we are together." She fought back tears. "You did this because you're the man I always believed you were. You just don't see it. You're so busy trying to prove something to your father, to your brother, but you are Henrik Weiss, and I believe in you. Always have." He moved closer. "When Franz Moret offered you the position, I panicked, but that fear was unfair. You showed me this marriage comes first. Camille, I should have trusted you." "I will always put us first," she replied tenderly. "But I can't stop being who I am. I need medicine. I need to practice because it gives me life." He nodded. "I know, and I want you to accept the offer. Truly." She raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Really? You're a star, and I'm a lucky man to have you by my side. Moritz can wait, but yes, except," she smiled, emotional, "I met with him today. I'll start next year. Time for the baby. For us." Henrik smiled, the one she loved. "We'll find a way to make everything work, Camille, as long as we're together." She leaned in to kiss him, but he paused, taking her hands first. "Before that, I need to tell you the truth." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside, a diamond ring. "When I said love was enough, I was lying. Love is everything. Always has been." Tears filled her eyes. "Will you be my wife again?" he asked, placing the ring beside her gold band. "Only if you promise you won't play the caveman again." "I promise," he whispered. She kissed him with everything she felt. At that moment, they were alone in the world. Past pains, fears, mistakes, all left behind. Henrik gently helped her undress, knelt beside her, and kissed her belly reverently. "Our baby is in there. I will be a better father than mine ever was." "I know," she whispered. And that night, under flickering candlelight, he loved her like never before, with tenderness, with honesty. Camille then knew, in her soul, there were no more ghosts between them, only love, and all that was still to come.